I'm really pleased this afternoon to have with me someone who I've known virtually for a number of years, and he's joining me to another one of Dr. Mark's virtual tea time chat, and that's Paul Laughlin. Uh, Paul is an expert in all things data analytics, but specifically on the people side of data and analytics, bringing out some of the softer and incredibly important leadership elements of people. And I've got a few key questions for Paul this afternoon as we sit together over a cup of virtual tea. So Paul, how have you been working and supporting your customer family as we've gone through this turbulent time?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me, by the way. These sound great, tea time chats. Supporting my customer family, lovely term, by the way, like the word customer family. I think it's been as ever that we learn as leaders about listening to your customers, understanding what their challenges are, and adapting the way that you help them to suit where they're at. So I can think within my customer base of a variety. I've had customers who it's been about how to make sure we can still deliver what we planned, but do it in a digital way.
Mm.
Can we move the coaching and the training online and help them with the different tools that they weren't so familiar with using?
Yeah, yeah,
Because most of my business was face to face until this all kicked off.
yeah.
Um, with others, it's been about being understanding and supporting them more emotionally because they need to press pause for now. They've got other priorities. They've got bigger fish to fry of what's going on. And I guess for lion's share, maybe in the middle, it's been about keeping them aware of what I can offer and sharing snippets of what I found useful along the way. I think we're all learning together. We all
Mm.
learn this tool helps with this, or by the way, did you know you can do the other? And sharing some of that has been well received as a less obtrusive way to keep in touch, keep on the radar screen, but not be selling in the traditional sense of that, but rather communicating what you find is helpful for them.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I think that's a really important point about being seen to be supporting the customer family rather than uh, you know parking the sales car at this moment in time. And what have you through your discussions with those leaders, what have you found that they've been doing to manage themselves with their teams?
I think learning about a new way of managing it, one of the effects that's had for me, to not quite directly
Yeah.
answer your question, is it's meant changing the content I focus on. So I was used to focusing very much on sort of a broad, I guess, curriculum almost of softer skills and leadership skills that were relevant to leading a data analytics team. We do data visualization,
Mm.
stakeholder management, all that good stuff. And increasingly, it's been about realizing, they're a bit all at sea with how to manage remote teams. They're used to keeping an eye on their people in the office.
Mm.
They're almost swinging between those two extremes of sometimes you feel, am I being emotionally supportive and compassionate enough with my team? And other times they feel, am I keeping an eye on them? Is everybody
Yeah,
swinging the
yeah,
lead and
yeah,
not doing the
yeah.
work? Um, and it's been about rapidly producing training content on managing remote teams and suddenly realizing I've done it for 20 years and even with teams in India. So you suddenly remember things that are actually
Yeah,
relevant learning
yeah,
you've
yeah,
had and
yeah.
dig it out. I think also recognizing, and this has kind of been a nice joining up of a couple of things for me, that even though everything's a lot more digitally mediated now, actually, it's even more about humanizing than it ever was. Managers need to learn how to bother to use audio, video, not just do a phone call,
Mm.
talk more about the social stuff and how people are doing, and be felt as approachable and interested in what had previously sometimes been they'd never talked about people's home lives. They'd never really got to know them outside the
Yeah,
office.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
even though
yeah.
it's kind of all about more use of technology, it's kind of even more about the human side now than it was to start with.
Yeah, I think you're just spot on in terms of picking up that. I mean, even from what you were talking about, your own, your own support from the customer family. It's it's that emotional, it's that emotional piece
Mm,
often. And
mm,
one of the things that we've been picking up is around that balance and how you
mm, mm,
humanize what can be quite a daunting experience for people that they're not used to.
yeah.
Um, Before I move to the last question, Paul,
Mm,
uh, one of the things that we've also um, been picking up is this, which links very nicely to what you were talking about in terms of that,
good.
emotion, uh, is is the thinking time where
Mm,
often we would go to a meeting and we would think on the way to the meeting and we would reflect on the way back from the meeting.
mm, mm,
And in
mm,
this virtual environment where
mm,
we're going from one to the next
mm,
and not giving ourselves the mental rest that we need
mm,
to be able
mm,
to recover from one meeting. And often we're carrying over some of those emotions from
yes.
one into the next and not realizing it. And people are, whoa, what's going on with you? And
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
and that has been, we've been picking that up quite a lot, and it's one of those things that's to a certain extent gone under the radar. It's
Mm,
quite interesting.
mm,
That's why
mm.
I've raised it as part of what you were talking about, very much the emotional side of 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 business. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, Mark, actually. I don't think I've heard anyone articulate it quite that way. The idea of not having the time to stop the emotions leaking from one meeting into another. That's interesting. Uh, not the same point, but kind of related. I've certainly found it's useful for people to be actually more disciplined and more intentional about their meetings. And
Mm,
even though the meetings are kind of humanized and can seem more relaxed, actually, the leaders are needing to plan much more carefully beforehand what they want out of the meeting,
yeah.
expect people to read things and prepare more before a meeting, and protect time to take notes and follow up with actions for people after the meeting. So, leaders who kind of got away with a little bit more of an ad hoc style of
Yeah.
running meetings before need to be more structured all around the meeting and then very human and relaxed in their style in the meeting, which is quite a lot of skill, actually.
Oh, it is, and really tiring. You know,
Mm, mm,
I don't know about you, but I've been um, incredibly tired, and and um, the last thing I wanted to do of an evening was sit and watch, sit in front of a screen, watching TV. So I actually watched less TV than I've done for a long, long
mm.
time. I never was a big watcher of TV anyway, but it's that's another thing that actually we haven't heard a lot of. That this whole thing is quite draining because you're concentrating a lot more than you probably would have, have imagined if you were in face to face in that environment.
Yeah, no, completely. In fact, I've found with it's happened with a couple of clients now. We might have started with an aspiration, let's try and do that whole day training course and we'll do it online. And you gradually learn we're absolutely all queen crackered now.
Yeah,
Let's break this up into a half day maximum that we'll do it, and let's do it in two or three chunks, maybe three chunks within that anyway, and definitely take breaks and encourage everybody to walk around a little bit. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. It's tiring. You can't think of the same time period and the same um, way of doing it and using your time for that kind of delivery as before. Funnily enough, I was reading, I think it might be in the BPS's journal, the British Psychological Society. There's actually been some studies done on why this is quite so tiring. And there is a degree of not just cognitive load, but almost emotional load in
Mm,
the fact of constantly being mediated by technology. There's a degree of constant feedback loop of you can't be with this person, you are distant, and you've
mm.
got to concentrate on that that digital image is a human being and
Yeah,
make it more of an
yeah, yeah.
effort than is natural in your learn a way your body is used to.
So that that leads me nicely to the last question, Paul. And a man
Good.
who's used to providing significant insights, this will be very easy for you.
It's setting up for failure now, Mark.
Because actually, a lot of businesses now are, and you've probably come across as well, firmly focused on this next stage of business recovery.
Mm.
I wonder what your big outtakes are for moving back into this recovery phase. What you're picking up and what you'd like to share.
Good question, and not an easy one. So maybe I'll start with the kind of caveat one. I'm actually finding that more and more businesses are realizing they don't yet have all the answers, but they can't afford to wait. So
Mm,
I think the businesses I'm seeing get this right are realizing, okay, now is the time to start practicing doing things differently, putting the building blocks in place, not suspended animation, and hopefully one day the government will tell us it's all over and it was a bad dream.
mm,
They're realizing there is a new normal to adjust to, and quite a lot of unknown in that. And it will
mm,
mean a way of working that includes more experimentation,
mm.
a way of working that accepts that some things will have to be done in a throwaway way, because either it won't work, which is the usual kind of fail
Yeah,
fast type mentality, or the context will have changed in a way we didn't predict, and that's more likely than ever now.
yeah, yeah.
So the first lesson is probably don't get uncomfortable with uncertainty and get on with starting to do stuff, because you'll get the learning by doing. I think the other is probably that organizations are beginning to rightly take a bit of a confidence boost from the fact that so far has just worked much better than they expected. I work with some quite large organizations in sort of FTSE 100 and FTSE 250 kind of size. And some of those are big old traditional behemoths.
Mm,
And
mm.
they weren't at all geared up for all their staff being home with laptops working from
Yeah,
home.
yeah.
And yet they've done that so quick. The faster thinking, the longer looking leaders are going, we can do things quicker than we think. And
Yeah,
some of the
yeah,
assumptions
yeah,
that have held us back,
yeah.
actually, we've kind of just disproved them. So why couldn't we now revisit the things that have got knocked into the long grass or thought there isn't sufficient demand? Because now's the time to try some of those things that were almost in the too hard category, ironically, because
Mm,
actually now we've shown that we can knock up hospitals in no time and get everyone working from home.
brilliant. That was really insightful, which is
Good. I'm glad I delivered on that
good
one.
because
Phew. Brand
because
reputation.
that's sitting behind you on your board there, Paul. So so thank you for coming and sharing a cup of tea
You're
in
welcome.
Dr. Mark's virtual afternoon tea time chats. And look forward to catching up with you again soon, Paul. Take
Yeah,
care.
thank you. And you.
Bye bye now.